Hello, I am petroonishchuk. Topic of this video, WebSockets. In this video, I want to create couple projects. I want to create iOS project, I want to create Golang project, and also I want to create web project for work with WebSockets. In this video, I will work with Piesockets WebSocketServers and also Golang WebSocketServers. In this video, I want to create couple WebSocket client application. Our iOS WebSocket client application will connect to our Piesocket WebSocket server and also to our Golang WebSocket server. And also our iOS WebSocket client application, our Golang WebSocket client application, and our WebSocket client application, I will connect to our Golang WebSocket server. First, I will create our iOS project. With iOS project, I will connect to our Piesocket WebSocket server and also to our Golang WebSocket server. And now, first, I will start create our iOS application. And in our iOS application, first I will create file what we will call our model. For example, how you can see, I start a new project. And also I rename a content view to my content view. And also I create a model. Inside our folder model, I create file message model. Inside the file, we have a structure message. Then I will use the structure for create a message object and work in our application. In the first part of this video, I try to connect our iOS application to Piesocket WebSocket server. This is a site for our Piesocket WebSocket server. We move to this link and then we'll be using this link to connect to our WebSocket server. Link to this WebSocket server I put below in description. And now for connect to our Piesocket WebSocket server, I must create a view model and also I must create a view. Inside our view model, we will create a function for work with our WebSocket server and also for work with our view. And now after I create our view model and also after I create our view, I try to explain how you can connect to our Piesocket WebSocket server and also I will explain our view. For example, and now I want to explain what I create. I create a model, I create a view model, and also I create a view. Let's start with the model. How you can see inside file MessageModel.swift file, I create a structure message. This structure will create method object when we will be receive data from our WebSocket server and also when we will be send data to our WebSocket server. How you can see our structure have couple property, ID, body, sender and sender ID. ID will be used for create unique identification for each message. Body will be hold text from our message. Sender will be hold who sends this message. And also sender ID will be hold unique identification for each connection to our WebSocket server. I will be using this property when I will be create our Golang WebSocket server. And inside our Golang WebSocket server, I will fill this property. Later I explain how we will use this property. And also I create coding kit enum for encode and decode our message object when we will send and receive our data from our WebSocket. Okay, let's move to our view model. And now I want to explain what I create inside Piesocket view model. First, how you can see, I create a two property. First property, WebSocket task. This property will be called URL session WebSocket task. This property will be responsible for WebSocket connection. And also I create property all message. This property will be called all message what we receive from our WebSocket server and display this message in our application. Next function for clean all message. This function will clean all message for hold our all message property. And now we start our WebSocket connection. First function is function connect. With this function we make our WebSocket connection. First, inside our function for create our WebSocket connection, we create our URL. First, how you can see, our URL start not from HTTP, our URL start from WSS. URL for make our WebSocket connection can start from WS and WSS. WS, that means our WebSocket connection not secure. WSS is secure WebSocket connection. And then, how you can see, we create our WebSocket task by using our URL, what we create previously. This is our URL. We set this URL and create our WebSocket task, and we will hold this WebSocket task in our WebSocket task property. And then we will use this WebSocket task property. And then we use it receive closer from our WebSocket task. We use this receive closer for run our onReceive method each time when we take message from our WebSocket server. How you can see, we will run our onReceive method each time when we will be receive message from our WebSocket server. This is our method onReceive. This method takes one parameter, result. That result can hold our message or can hold an error. And next, after we assign our onReceive method to our receive closer from our WebSocket task, we start our WebSocket connection. And now let's move to our onReceive method. With this method will be received incoming message from our WebSocket server. And also, because our onReceive method will be run once when we receive our message, how you can see, after we receive our message from our WebSocket server, we try to rebuild our handler from our onReceive method. How you can see, after we receive a new message from our WebSocket server or receive an error, we rebuild this handler. That means our WebSocket task will be wait a new message from our WebSocket server. That means if we don't write this line of code, we will receive only one message from our WebSocket server. As an example, when we take one message from our WebSocket server, we rebuild our receive handler for take our onReceive method each time after we take a new message from our WebSocket server. And next we check our result. We can have two variants, success and failure. If we have a success variant, that means we have our message. If we have a failure, that means we have an error. Next, in our success case, we check if our message is string. If our message is string, we create our new message object by using our text what we receive from our WebSocket server. We create ID for our message and also text. Body will be called text what we take from our WebSocket server. Sender, we put our demo type Piesocket. Sender ID, I type in API. And on the end, when we create a new message object by using data what we receive from our WebSocket server, by using our dispatch queue.main.async, we append a new value, new message what we create to our all message array will hold our Piesocket view model. How you can see, I use dispatch queue because when we assign a new value to our array, we'll display this array in our application. That means we'll be change view in our application. That means we must make this change on the main thread. And also, if we have a failure, that means we have an error. We print an error. Next, we create a method for close our connection, and also we create the need for close our connection when our class will be out of memory. And also on the end we have a method send. This method will be send data to our WebSocket server. And by using our WebSocket property, we use a send method for send a string data to our WebSocket server. Our send method also have a completion hazard. That means after we try to send data to our WebSocket server, we can have an error. And next we check if we have an error. If our error is not nil, that means we have an error and we print this error. Okay, this is what a method for work with our WebSocket connection. And now move to our PiesocketView. And then I will run our simulator and show you how we can connect to our WebSocket server and display data in our application. Okay, this is our PiesocketView. This is simply view with couple sections. First section for text field, because we will be send data in our Piesocket WebSocket server. And also have a button section for connect to our WebSocket server, for send a message, for disconnect, and also for clean a list. How you can see, we're using method from our PiesocketView model. Connect method, set method text, disconnect, and also clean all message. Connect method, disconnect method, and send message method. And on the end, we have a for each structure for display a data what we received from our WebSocket server. I create for each with vStack. Inside vStack, we have couple text view for display data from our message object. ID, sender, sender ID, and body. And now I try to run our simulator and try to connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we're using this WebSocket server, and also we're using this URL. For example, this is our main content view. Now we move to our PiesocketView. This is our text field. In this text field, we will be typing a text what we want to send to our WebSocket server. And also our button for connect, for send message, for disconnect, and also for clean a list. On the button will be have our list of messages what will be received from our WebSocket server. And now when I try to connect to our WebSocket server and successful connect to our WebSocket server will be send message to our application, and our application will be display this message in our list. And also, when you try to send message to our WebSocket server and send this message, our WebSocket server takes this message and return back this message. That means message with this tag we must have in our list. For example, how you can see, when you tap connect to WebSocket server, our WebSocket server tries to send message to our application. How you can see, he sent message hello world, and we also have different ID for each message. And also, I try to send couple times this message to our WebSocket server. That means we must have this message in our list. How you can see, we have this message sent from iPhone 13 Pro. That means our setup worked correctly. How you can see, on the first part of this video, I try to connect to Piesocket WebSocket server and take message from this WebSocket server and display this message in our application. And next, I want to also create a connection to WebSocket server. But in this example, I want to connect to WebSocket server what I will be create with Golang. And now I want to explain what I create. Now let's move to our new view model. I create a new GOWebsocketView model. This class we will make our WebSocket connection to our WebSocket, what I will create with Go language. And now let's see what we have in our class. First, we have also WebSocket task. This is similar like in our previous example when we create our WebSocket connection to web application. First, inside our class, I create a property WebSocket task. This property will be responsible for our WebSocket connection. I also create this property in our previous example. How you can see, in this class, we have also our property. And also, inside the class, we have another property. First property, message text. Second property, message sender. And also, we have array of all message objects, what will be displayed in our application. This property I create a new message, what will be sent to our WebSocket server, what I will be create with Golang project. Let's move to the next method. I create method for clean all message from our array. For clean text field, what we will be using for create a new message. And also, I create a function for remove line and space from our value, what we will put in our property. This property and this property for create a new message. Next, I create a function for check if we can send value to our WebSocket server. We check if we have a value in text message and message sender. Next method for create our new message. As you can see, I take message text, message sender, create new message object, and return this new message. As you can see, for ID and also for sender ID, I don't put value, because value for ID and sender ID I will put in our WebSocket server. Next, I create a two method for decode data and also for encode data. As you can see, I use generic for decode our data. We will decode type of decode our data, what I will be decoded, and this is input data, what I will be decoded. And also, we have a method for encode our data. As you can see, I take data, must be codable, and then I try to encode this data and return this data. If all successful. If not successful, we print an error. Okay, now it's our WebSocket section. First, how you can see, like in previous example, I create function for connect to our WebSocket server. But in this example, we have a different URL. Our URL not WSS, our URL WS, because we connect to local server. This is a not secure connection. And also our URL also different. And then, like in previous example, I assign WebSocket task to our property WebSocket task. This property responsibility for our WebSocket connection. I create WebSocket task by using URL. Next, I assign receive. That means each time when we will be receive message from our WebSocket server, will be run our receive message. This is our method. And on the end, we start our WebSocket connection. This is our function on receive. How you can see is similar like in previous example. First, what we do is run receive again when we receive a new value. Because when we receive a new value, we must reload our receive method for wait a new message what will be sent from our WebSocket server. And then we check if it's successful or we have an error. If we have an error, we print an error. If successful and we have our message, we check if our message is string. If our message is string, we convert our string to data. And then we try to decode our data from string to our message object. And if all successful, we take our message object and put to our all message array. How you can see, we put this object to our all message array. And also I use dispatch queue because when we will put to our all message array, will be change list in our application. That means will be change our view. That means we must do this on the main thread. If we have an error when we decode our data, we print an error. Next, we check our WebSocket connection. We can run our settingPing method. This method can return an error. If return an error, that means we have an error. We check. If we have an error, that means our error is not nil. That means we have an error and we print an error. If we don't have an error, we don't print this value. Next, as we can see, we have two methods for send our message, first and second. Let's start with this method. Send message to GOWebSocket server. As you can see, first we create a new message, what we want to send. Then we try to encode this data, new message, to the data. And then we try to create a string from our data using string, data, encoded data, encoded, whatever, 8. At the end, we run our function send text string data. That means we will send this data, but it will be string, not message object. This is our method send. How you can see, this method send our string data to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we take our WebSocket task.send string test, and also we have completion hazard, and we can have an error. We check our error. That means if we have an error, we print this error, and also we check our connection. And our method must be saved if we have a connection to our WebSocket server. If we have an error, that means maybe we don't have connection to our WebSocket server. This is two methods for send our message. First method, second method. And also we have a method for disconnect our WebSocket connection. How you can see, WebSocket task cancel, and also when our class will be out of memory, we also want to disconnect our WebSocket connection. Next, move to our view. This is our GOWebSocketView. Or how you can see, we create our state object GOWebSocketView, what called our GOWebSocketView model. Next, we have couple sections. This is view also similar like our view when we make our Piesocket WebSocket connection. First, we have our text view, but in this example, we have a two text field. First, we have our text field section. We have a two text field for enter body and sender text, and also we have text field. Next, our section is button section. We have couple buttons. First button for connect to WebSocket server. How you can see, we use a method from our view model. Second method, send message to GOWebSocket server. We run this method. How you can see, this is method what we run. We run this method, and next we run this method. Next, our button for disconnect our connection. How you can see, method disconnect. Next, for clean text field, and on the end for clean our list of messages what hold our view model. And on the end we have a section for display a list of messages what we take from our WebSocket server. Inside our for structure for each message, I create vStack, save vStack, we have a couple text fields for display ID, sender, sender ID, and body. And also I put this view in our main content view. How you can see now in our main content view, we have first our Piesocket view and second our GOWebSocketView. And now for testing our WebSocket connection, we must run our WebSocket server what we create by using Golang. For example, and now I want to run this WebSocket server and also our iOS WebSocketClient and also our web WebSocketClient and show you how it all works. And now you can see I run our iOS WebSocketClient. I also open our web WebSocketClient what we create by using JavaScript, and also I run our WebSocket server. And now I try to connect to our WebSocket server by using our iOS WebSocketClient. Now to connect to our WebSocket server, we must tap to this button. When I tap to this button, I take a message. This message unique ID for this message. Sender, when we make registration, our sender is empty. Sender ID is ID for this specific connection. And also our body connection succeeds. And now I try to send a message to our WebSocket server. Tap to send this message, and now you can see we have this message. When we tap to send this message, first we send this message to our WebSocket server, and then from our WebSocket server we send this message to our WebSocket client and display this message in our list. We have ID, our unique ID for each message. Sender, iOS app, this is our one. Sender ID is ID of our connection. How you can see, our connection ID is the same, and also we have a body first message. That means our function works correct. And now I try to connect our web application. When we reload our page, we try to connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we have a message. Connection succeeds. And also we have sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID of our connection. For this connection, we have this ID. For this connection, we have this ID. And now I try to send this message, hello WebSocket, to our WebSocket server. And then our WebSocket server will send this message to our WebSocket client. For example, now you can see sender web, this is our message, body, hello WebSocket, and also sender ID the same, because this is one connection. When we try to send another message, we have our second message. Sender ID is the same. ID for each message is different. And also, how you can see, in this time we connect our WebSocket client and also iOS WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. But when we send message from our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server, for example, from iOS application, our message don't display in our web application. Because, how I said previously, this is one-to-one connection. And also, when we send message from our web application, our message don't display in our iOS application. And now, if you want send message, for example, from our iOS application and also display this message in our web application and also in our iOS application, we must use a pull connection. This means we'll be take this message and send this message to each connection what connect to our WebSocket server. To create this connection, I must create a new project. And next, when I create our project with pull connection and we can send our message to all our WebSocket clients, we also will be testing our Golang WebSocket client. How you can see, in this example, we don't using our Golang WebSocket client because our Golang WebSocket client will be sent message after she accepts couple message from our WebSocket server. And now I want to start create a new project, and also inside our project for start I will create our main file and also file what will be called our model. For example. And now I show you what I will be using for display how it all works. First, we have our WebSocket server, what I create to make our pull connection. Next, we have our WebSocket client, what I create with our Golang project. Next is our iOS WebSocket client and our simulator. And also, we have our WebSocket client, what I create by using HTML and JavaScript. For this WebSocket client, we'll be using our browser. As you can see, we'll be using this browser for connect to our WebSocket server with full connection. And now I run all our projects. For example, first I must run our WebSocket server to connect our WebSocket client what create by using HTML and JavaScript. To connect our WebSocket client, we must reload our web page. As you can see, when we reload our page, we take our message from our WebSocket server with ID, unique ID for each message, body, join a new user, and also this is our sender ID. This will be unique sender ID for this connection between WebSocket client and our WebSocket server. This unique ID for this WebSocket client what I create with HTML and JavaScript. Next, try to connect our iOS WebSocket client. For connect, I must tap this button. And now, when I tap to connect to our WebSocket server, our WebSocket server, if connect successful, must also send message what I successful connect our WebSocket client, what I create is our iOS device. That means this WebSocket client, WebSocket client, must accept also message about this new WebSocket client, what we connect to our WebSocket server. For example, how you can see, when you tap to connect to our WebSocket server, we successful connect, and our WebSocket server sends message about successful connect to our simulator, WebSocket client, iOS project. How you can see, sender, body, join a new user, sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID for this connection. How you can see, this is unique ID for this connection, this is unique ID for iOS connection. Next, we have also WebSocket client, what I create with Golang project. For example, now you can see, when we run our WebSocket client, we successfully connect to our WebSocket server. And we also have a new user what connect to our WebSocket server. Also different ID, accept our web IP and also accept our iOS device. Our iOS device have two messages, not three, because first, WebSocket client what we connect to our WebSocket server was our this WebSocket client. And also with our WebSocket client what I create with our Golang language, we will be send message to our WebSocket server when number of message will take our WebSocket client divide by 3 and last will be 0. Later I show you when our WebSocket client will be sent a message. And now let's try and send couple messages. As you can see, this is our server. When we run the server, it goes through all value for each connection, request header, we have this value, header, and how you can see, we have second WebSocket key value. This value we use it for each connection, because this unique value for each connection between WebSocketServer and WebSocketClient. Okay, let's move and send couple messages. Let's start first message from our iOS device. How you can see, I create message text from iOS. Sender will be iPhone 14 Pro. And when I tap send this message, we send this message to our WebSocket server, and our WebSocket server sends this message to all clients that connect to our WebSocket server, our iOS client, web client, and also Golang client. For example, how you can see, when I tap, we take this message. ID, unique message, text body, text from iOS, sender, iPhone 14, and sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID for this connection. How you can see, this is our ID for connection, and also this is our ID when we connect our iOS project to our WebSocket server. When we tap again, we also will have the same ID. How you can see, sender ID the same. And now we have a new message. Server body 3 device 3 equals 0. This means the sender our Go client. How we said previously, our Go client will be send message when count of message will take our Golang client, divide by 3, and at last we will have 0. How you can see, we have a 3 message and we send our message. Sender ID when we connect our Golang client. How you can see, now count of message 4. Next time we send message when our count of message will be 6. Now try to send message from our web IP. How you can see, I tap to send message and we send this message. ID, hello WebSocket client, this text, sender web, sender ID, tag I, our first ID, because we first connect our WebSocket client. And also we have this message in our iOS device. How you can see, we have this message, hello WebSocket. The same message, the same sender ID, and also we have this message here. And now, how you can see, we take this message also through our Golang WebSocket client and our message. See, this means our WebSocket client send message. And we have this message, body 6 3 equals 0, sender, Go client, sender ID, and that's our ID, this ID, the same. Another message, we take this message here, and here. Now we have it. What our message, how you can see, what our message, iOS 14 Pro, testing from iOS 14. When we send message from our iOS device, we don't put this message that is array himself. Before our message display in this list, we send this message to our WebSocket server, and then our WebSocket server sends all message to our all WebSocket client but connect to our WebSocket server. Because when we create this message and send to our WebSocket server, we don't have unique ID. Our unique ID we place it to our message in our WebSocket server. Now you can see, this is our test field for creating new message. For connect, we run our function connect. For send message, we use this function. Let's move to this function. When we tap button, send message, how you can see, we create our new message. Then we try to encode our data to data. Then we convert the data to string. And then we send the data to our WebSocket server. Send the string data to our WebSocket server. Through this function send, we put this text, send, string, our text. Now let's move to our WebSocket server. This is our WebSocket server. This is our function that reads all messages from our WebSocket client. When we read this message, what we send from our iOS device, first we decode this data by using Marshall, and then by using this data, what we decode to our input message property, create a new message. How you can see, we take message from our iOS project. After we take this message, we create a new message. But when we create a new message, we assign our message unique ID. How you can see, because when we create message in our iOS device, we don't set ID for our message. Here we set our new unique ID. For body, we use body what we send from our iOS device, and also sender from our iOS device. Sender ID is client ID. Client ID is unique ID for each connection between WebSocket client and WebSocket, and send that message to our channel. Let's move to this channel. This channel takes this message, and then we try to use this message for send this message to each client that hold our pool. How you can see, run pool client and try to send this message. Client can write this message. And then after we send this message by using our client connection. That means we send this message to all clients what connect to our WebSocket server. Our web client, IS client, Golang client. Let's move to our IS client. We send this message and our IS client on receive function will be take message from our WebSocket server. When we take this message and we all successful, we take this message and we check if our message is text. Then we convert our text to data and then we decode our data to object what we will be displayed in our IS application. How you can see, we decoded this data and then by using dispatch queue, because how you can see, when we put this data in our list, will be change our view. Change our view, we only must on the main thread. And if all successful, we decode our data, we put this data to our all message array and display the data in our application. With our client, all similar. This is function for read our message. This is for send message what take our channel. Each time when we send message from our IS device or web application, our Golang WebSocket client takes this message after this message sent from our WebSocket server. He takes this message and then decodes this message to our new message property. And if all successful, we put this message to our client message. How you can see, this channel takes this message and then we use this message. But first we put this message to our slides of all message object. Then we check how many messages we have in our all message array. Because we don't want each time when our server sends our message to our client and we take this message and send again to server. And then server again to client, client to server, and the circle is not so interesting. Because I create this if number of messages divided 3 equals 0. That means we'll be sent message if our value will be 3, 6, 9, and if our value, for example, 3 or 6 or 9, we create a message with value, count of value what we create, and send this message, go client. And then we send this message by using write.json object. And after we write this message, we display this message in our IS project and web application. In our app application, that's similar. This is our HTML object. This is our JavaScript. Connect to WebSocket. We run this function when we reload our web application. This means when we reload our page. This function reads all messages what we take from our WebSocket server. This function runs when we close our application. This function runs when we close our connection. This function runs when we open our connection. And this function we run when we want to send our message to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we take message from our text field, create object, and send this object by using our WebSocket connection set JSON our object, and display this value in our web page. Let's start. I send couple messages. How you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we have 9 number. That means our WebSocket client with Golang client send our message 9 or 11, 12. That means we must send message. And now we have 15. That means we send our message from our Golang client. And also we have all this message in our IS device. How you can see, this is our all message. On the end we have our message from our Golang client. And also I want to show you how we can reconnect our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. For example, let's run all again. How you can see, we connect our IS project, web project, and also Golang project. And now, how you can see, because we connect on the another order, we have a 3 message in our Golang project. And our Golang WebSocket client send this message. We can send this message from web, and we have this message in our IS project. We send a couple messages from our IS project. How you can see, first 2, our Golang client send message, 3, and again our Golang client send message. And now I want to show you how we can reconnect our WebSocket client. As you can see, when we send message from our IS project, this is our connection from our IS WebSocket client. This is when we connect for IS project for Golang. And now I clean this list and disconnect. How you can see, when you tap to disconnect, we have a user disconnect sender, our ID for connection, what we make between our IS project and WebSocket server. How you can see, we send this message here. And now when we try to connect, we connect to our WebSocket server, and also we have a new ID for our connection. And now when I try to send message to our WebSocket server, our ID connection will be IS. How you can see, this line we connect our IS project, send message IS, send message IS. But here our message IS, another ID. This before reconnected, this is after reconnect. And our Golang client have the same sender ID. We also can reconnect our WebSocket client. How you can see, we reload and we can see we join with sender ID this value. This means when we send value from our WebSocket client, our sender ID will be this value. And also our Go client send message because of this statement. This new message, sender web, sender ID when we connect it. And also this sender we can see here. We can also reconnect it our Golang. How we can see, user disconnect Golang client, connect again. This is sender ID for our Golang client. Send couple messages from our IS device. How you can see, our Golang client again send message, sender ID, and also sender ID when we connect. Number is 3 because previously number was big, but when we reload our WebSocket client, our slice of all message was whole, our property in our Golang WebSocket client start from 0. How you can see, when we disconnect our IS project and also our Golang client, WebSocket client, our size of connection full 1 because we have only one connection, our WebSocket client. When we close our server, we reload, we don't have any message because we close our WebSocket server. How you can see, our connection was 2. After we disconnect one client, our connection 1. Okay, this is the end of my video. In this video, I tried to create couple projects for create a couple WebSocket client and also for create a couple WebSocket server. On the last, I create WebSocket server for using pull connection. With our pull connection, we can take message from one WebSocket client what connect to our WebSocket server and send this message to all WebSocket clients what connect to our WebSocket server. In this video, I create WebSocket client by using IS project, Golang project, and also Web project. Golang project and also project by using HTML and JavaScript. All link to package what I using in my video and also link to another source what I using in my project I put below in description. And also you can find all completed project in my Git repository. And also all video will be placed in my YouTube channel. All my video where I create our WebSocket client and also WebSocket server will be separate in 2 parts. In first part will be video where I create our WebSocket client by using IS project. And second part I will be posted video where I create our WebSocket client with our Golang project and also HTML and JavaScript. And also in second part I put video where I create our WebSocket server for one-to-one connection and also for our pull connection where we can send message to all WebSocket clients what connect to our WebSocket server. This is the end. Thank you for watching.